Good afternoon, good morning, good evening, wherever you may be. Welcome to our talk on human knowledge problems, knowledge activities, and the activities results. I'm Dr. Kendra Albright, and along with my colleague, Dr. Bill Edgar, we're very pleased to be here today representing Kent State University in the School of Information. And we are one of the few places that offers a Master of Science in Knowledge Management. As academics, we strive to blend theoretical underpinnings with current state-of-the-art practice to provide students with thorough preparation for careers in KM and related fields. That blend of theory and practice is what led us to the particular topic we're presenting today to help us better understand knowledge activities. Our presentation today will focus on the intellectual placement of knowledge management, and we will focus on the activities of knowledge management that are designed to solve human problems and then the results of those activities. The knowledge management literature and knowledge activities, as well as KM processes, is quite extensive and fragmented. It encompasses many proposed activities and different classifications and categorizations of them. The result is a substantial kind of ambiguity as to what activities are actually included in KM and why they're included. In general, this literature offers a wide array of KM's activities about knowledge and upon knowledge. These studies often integrate into them the various versions of a cycle of such activities, beginning with different of knowledge dissemination, continuing with the derivations of knowledge storage, and ending with versions of knowledge use and possibly further learning. While these models are useful, they really don't address two deeper issues. The first of those has to do with the causes for those activities. In other words, what are the possible reasons that these activities are done in the first place? Considering these reasons raises some important questions, like what human problems as to knowledge, especially perennial human knowledge problems, do KM's activities upon knowledge actually address? Can these problems identify deeper underlying categories of KM activities, i.e. meta-categories that are performed to address them? And we believe that the answer to both of those questions is yes. Moreover, a second deeper issue that's not addressed by previous models is that they do not identify and incorporate other central phenomena of KM, the direct results of KM's activities, which then themselves can exert influence within KM and affect their originating KM activities. So to address these kinds of gaps, the need to identify the underlying problems that are addressed by KM activities and to identify KM's results, Bill will present a framework that encompasses these 5 meta-categories that you see here of KM's activities, and with each category addressing one of the 5 perennial human knowledge problems. We offer this framework as a tool to advance research upon and performance of KM activities central to its effectiveness in meeting human knowledge needs. And with that, I'll turn it over to Bill.
All right, thank you, Kendra. So the first perennial problem human problem as to knowledge that we've identified is what we call the limited mind problem. And this isn't the idea that human beings are unintelligent and therefore have a limited mind. Instead, it's the idea that human beings only have so much intellectual capacity to absorb knowledge. And in fact, that capacity is relatively quite small, even minuscule, compared to the sheer amount of knowledge that needs to be absorbed, that exists. And so, for example, if we think about knowledge that exists in recorded form as content items in digital documents and books and so forth, and this number is expanding exponentially as the digital world expands tremendously now. The result is that what people can absorb, the percentage that they can absorb out of that just shrinks and shrinks. So there's this ongoing problem that we call the limited mind problem. And it seems that KM deals with this through a set of activities that we have termed to be knowledge change. This has to do with, one, bringing knowledge into existence through knowledge discovery, but also dealing with knowledge once it already exists. For example, capturing knowledge through things like data mining, development and refining knowledge, the selection of knowledge items, content items, as they go into collections of items, a description of knowledge, which creates metadata, and classification of knowledge, which creates organizational patterns for knowledge, particularly in explicit recorded form, to exist in. And we see the pattern here of activity and result. Discovery leading to discovered knowledge, capture to captured knowledge, and things like algorithms. The development leading to more refined knowledge, selections leading to collections of knowledge, description and classification leading to metadata and organizational patterns of knowledge. Next slide. The second problem that we've identified is what we call the understanding problem. This is the challenge that people have in understanding knowledge. Both understanding knowledge as its own thing generically, but also in understanding specific areas and specific topics of knowledge. Particularly if we just look at generic knowledge in, say, explicit form, people do struggle to understand it. It's not intuitive for most people, and so they need assistance. And they also need time and activities to help them to consider this vast body of knowledge and to mediate it. And so we do this as information and knowledge professionals in several ways. We do this through search of knowledge items, which brings about questions, queries, search queries. We help them retrieve knowledge, which brings about retrieve knowledge and retrieval sets. We do consulting with them, which brings about advice. We do instruction. This brings about the learning that they have, the changed mental states. We do discussion, which brings about ongoing conversation. So again, here, the challenge that people have is they need to try to understand knowledge, and what KM and information professions can do in regards to this is to offer these mediating and these mediating activities and activities that help with consideration of knowledge. Next slide. Next, there's the problem of what we call time and mortality. And that is to say that knowledge has to exist and does exist over extremely long periods of time, up to and including centuries. And this can exist, knowledge can exist across the centuries in mental form and in recorded form. So we think about a book that might have knowledge in it, a well-made, well-printed book. It could be 400 or 500 years old or older, but human beings do well to live 80, even at best 100 years. So there's this ongoing problem. There's the need to bring knowledge down through time, whether it's in mental form, meaning tacit, or in recorded form, meaning explicit knowledge. Activities related to this are conveyance activities, that's what we've turned them to be, acquisition of materials, explicit knowledge items through lease agreements and purchase, but also long-term storage in repositories, physical and digital repositories, and also the transfer of knowledge down through time and the dissemination of it down through time. For example, through mentoring and other forms of personnel development that's done, apprenticeship relationships and so forth, bringing knowledge down from one human generation to the next. Next slide. The next problem is what we've called the big world problem. It's a problem of place. And there's really two parts to this. One is that whether we're dealing with the physical world or the digital world, either world is gigantic compared to, say, an individual human being. And so the question becomes, if they need knowledge, let's say in recorded form, where do they go? It's a gigantic world. Well, what we've done is to develop places where knowledge is to be found, for example, libraries. And so we've designated these places as places to go, thereby excluding all the other places they might want to go and speeding up access in that respect. But also what we do is once they get to those places, we do things so as to make the access better in those places. We organize and construct those places in certain ways to speed up access. And we've all experienced this when we've dealt with, let's say, a well-designed library versus a badly designed library. And it really does make a huge difference. In a well-designed library, it's easy to find things. In a badly designed one, it's not. So this is the issue of place and the idea of the big world. And this applies in both physical and digital environments. Next slide. Next and last, but by no means least, is the issue of knowledge consequences. That is to say, people need results from knowledge. And those results can come in several forms. They come as we use knowledge, apply knowledge so as to learn new knowledge, and the result is the new knowledge that we've learned. We need results from knowledge through consideration, and the result there is reflection. We use knowledge to simply think about it individually or collectively in groups, and we do reflection. We use knowledge so as to communicate it, sending it from one person to another, from one group to another, and the result is communicated knowledge. We do it to make decisions. Do we go through the process of decision making individually and collectively as people? And the result are decisions, which can be in written form or in verbal form. We do this to test knowledge. This is the scientific method, scientific inquiry, scholarly inquiry. We take something that we know and we test it. We go out and gather evidence and we observe. We observe evidence, gather evidence through observation, and then test what we've observed, our observations against our current knowledge and see if we need to change it. And finally, action. And this comes in all kinds of forms. We use knowledge, we apply knowledge so as to act, so as to do manufacturing, customer service, new product and service development and revision and so forth, in all kinds of different ways. Also keep in mind that these activities do not exist separately from one another. In fact, they exist interconnected with one another. So they're all going on all at the same time. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And we do have some references for you, and we encourage you to take a look at these. A number of these have the original models of KM activities that Kendra referred to at the beginning of our talk. We encourage you to take a look at them for yourselves. Thank you.